Hello, all of you beautiful hive scum out there, and welcome to another Astromax video. In this video, we will continue our exploration of Codex Genestealer Cults from Warhammer 40,000. In this video, specifically, we're going to cover Warlord Traits, Relics, and the Broodmind discipline. So grab your brood brothers and sisters, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and get ready because the Day of Ascension starts right now. All right, before we jump into the heart of today's episode, I just want to take a quick minute for two updates. First update is not really an update. Sincerely, thank you so much for subscribing, and you guys have been killing it in the comment section. I've loved hearing about tournaments you're going to, lists you're running, things you're trying. So what I'm doing this week for actual work-wise, we're doing a demo on a wall and putting up welding a fence. Helping a friend out, so that's gonna be fun. Most importantly, we get to play with demolition hammers, so I'm gonna be doing my best aberrant impersonation. So if you want to see that, go ahead and follow us on Instagram because I'll post those pictures over there. The demo hammers, pretty sweet, pretty excited. Enough with the sideshow here. Let's jump into the heart of today's topics and Warlord Traits. The Genestealer Cults have them. You're never gonna use them. Let's move on. I'm kidding. But in all seriousness, the Warlord Trait section is and always has been the pit of this book. It's just not good, and it has only gotten worse as 9th edition has gone on. So before we can jump into the Warlord Traits, however, we have to look at the stratagems because there are two stratagems that allow you to access Warlord Traits, one in the Codex and one in the Arks of Omen mission pack. Now, the one in the Arks of Omen mission pack is a carryover from Nephilim. The other stratagem that makes Warlord Traits kind of a meh in this book is that in order to have more than one of them, you have to include a Patriarch in your army. So, and the Patriarch is 140 points. He's not cheap. And while I think the Patriarch has like utility, it's certainly a fun model. And if you're doing any kind of crusade, you definitely want a Patriarch because there's a lot of different ways that it interacts with the crusade specifically, and that's just really cool. But enough of that. Let's jump in, and we're going to focus on just the main Warlord Traits here, not necessarily the cult ones. There's like one or two instances I might bring one of those up. But we're going to stick to just the main 6 that are here in this book. Now, one thing, as I started learning Warhammer and getting more comfortable with the rules of Warhammer and list building in particular, one thing I always look for in Warlord Traits, and in the Relic section, so it'll come up there too, but especially in Warlord Traits, is what kind of force multipliers do I have access to? It's all well and good to take a Warlord Trait that's going to make one character better, but if you're paying CP for it, you're not spending CP on a stratagem in-game. There's something else in your list that isn't going in there, something else you're going to do that you aren't doing because you spent a CP on this. So how is this going to make your whole army better? First one is Focus of Adoration. While a friendly Cult Core or Cult Pure Strain Genestealers unit is within 6 inches of this Warlord, that unit is eligible to perform heroic interventions as if it were a character unit. So heroic interventions are cool. And Focus of Adoration isn't bad. It is a lot better if you're doing a melee build, probably in Twisted Helix, and you probably have a lot of Pure Strains, and you probably have a Patriarch. This isn't bad. The Patriarch, much like the Aberrants, we'll discuss more in data sheets, but much like the Aberrants, you would think that setting it up as a melee monster is the way to go. I actually think setting up as a force multiplier is probably going to be the better option, and being able to heroically intervene with squads of 10 juiced up Pure Strains or some juiced up Metamorphs or Acolytes or anything is not bad. Shadow Stalker, each time an attack is made against this Warlord, subtract 1 from that attack's hit roll. A great example of something you're going to pay 1 CP for. It's going to help you out maybe one time while you're being shot at, but ultimately it is not going to lead to your character being any more survivable than it already was. Before we jump on to the second Warlord trait, I do need to mention, I forgot one thing. It was in one of the other videos. the detachment abilities, Warlord Traits can only be given to HQ units, which is another reason why this section of the book really struggles. Biomorph Adaptation. Add 1 to attacks and toughness characteristics of this Warlord. If you're doing a narrative thing, this is fun to put on a Patriarch. When you can do a Crusade and over time you'll stack up multiple buffs on a Patriarch, Biomorph Adaptation isn't a bad one to start with. Prowling Adjutant. Once per turn, when this Warlord is selected as the target of a charge, before the charge roll is made, and after firing any Overwatch, it can make a normal move up to 6 inches. It's fine. Yeah. That is pretty much the sum of this Warlord Trait section. Alien Majesty. This one has some uses. Add 3 inches to the range of this Warlord's aura abilities to a maximum of 9 inches. Add 3 inches to the range of following abilities this Warlord has, if any. Jackal, Meticulous Planner, Priority Target. Jackal's on there twice. It's Meticulous Planner, Priority Target. This would be good. This is fine on an Icon Ward. And if you're running Mirrored Cults and you desperately want to take a Warlord Trait, taking Alien Majesty and putting it on an Icon Ward to increase the range of a summon the cult to 9 inches is fine. If you're doing Pauper Princes and you're taking the Relic for the Icon Ward for the 5-up invuln saves, Alien Majesty, fine. Preternatural Speed. Each time this Warlord makes a melee attack, you can reroll the hit roll. At the start of the fight phase, if this Warlord is within engagement range of an enemy unit, it can fight first that phase. That is it for the Warlord Traits. You could tell I was super excited about that section. So we're going to move on to Relics, something that actually is kind of exciting to talk about when you're trying to build lists that fight everything that might come your way and score secondaries against a lot of different opponents. This book becomes pretty narrow in what you're going to take, and that also applies to the Relic section, where mostly what you're going to take are ways to get more crossfire. So, up first we have Sword of the Void's Eye. This is a fun blade. It replaces a Bone Sword or a Locust blade. If you're doing a Crusade, put it on a Locust. It's a lot of fun. It is a Strength +2, AP -3, 2 damage weapon. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, you can reroll the hit roll and reroll the wound roll. It's awesome in a Crusade, in a match play. As I've said a million times, it'll be a broken record by the end of this. There is no character in your army that justifies the CP spend and is going to get more than like 1 round of combat out of this. I don't care if it's a Primus. I don't care if it's a Locust. I don't care what it is. No one is going to survive more than 1 round of combat, and so you've spent 1 CP for a little bit better Bone Sword. The Hand of Aberrance. This one's cool, and if you do insist on taking a melee Primus and you want to stick them into combat somewhere, this is probably the only way to do it. So there you go. You get +1 attack, and every time you use it, you auto hit on 2s unless it's against a vehicle or a Titanic unit. And it's for 3 damage, AP -2. Yeah, again, your Primus is going to run in. You're going to kill like 2 things with this, and then it's going to die. Amulet of the Voidworm. I love this. I love this relic, and I loved it in 8th edition. I still like it in 9th edition, but my Crusade force runs an Abominate. Outside of that, and it uses this because it's kind of fun. But outside of that, there's like no purpose here. The bear has a 4+ invulnerable save. Once per battle, when an attack is allocated to the bear, it can channel Shadow of the Warp. If it does so, the saving throw is automatically a 6. Do not roll. That's kind of cool. Each time the bear declares a charge, enemy units that were targeted by that charge cannot fire, Overwatch, or set to defend against that charge. So give it an Abominate, a 4+ invulnerable save, and being able to turn off like Overwatch on his charges. So he charges a unit, the Aberrants go in behind him. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Makes him super hard to kill. He still doesn't kill a whole lot because he's only got 3 attacks, but, you know, it's Crusade, so we're there for the theme of the cult, and not so much that I want to win every match. Up next, we come to the first of the quote-unquote Crossfire relics. So what this is, it's Oppressor's Bane. It is a pistol. The masterwork pistol, known in cult folklore as Oppressor's Bane, was machined with expert care by mysterious, inhuman, skilled artisans. Ooh, spooky. So, model equipped with an auto pistol only. Ooh. The bearer gains the crossfire ability, page 89, and the crossfire keyword. This relic replaces an auto pistol and has the following profile. Oppressor's Bane, range 15 inches, pistol 3, that's kind of cool. Strength 4, AP minus 2, 2 damage. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, the target is treated as having crossfire marker and as being exposed for that attack. So 2 things here. 1, there's a lot of characters that have auto pistols that don't have the crossfire marker, so putting this on them gives them the crossfire marker, gives them access to a whole bunch of other support, and allows them to interact with the rest of the army a little bit better. Where I've seen this mostly in other, like what competitive players are doing with this is they're putting it on like a Reductus Saboteur, or they're putting it on the Icon Ward. The Clam of Us is another good place for it as well, because whatever it shoots out with those 3 shots is going to get treated as crossfire and exposed, so +1 to hit, +1 to wound on those 3 shots. Plus, you target this with a unit. You target a unit with this, because it's damage 2, as long as you make 1 of those hits, it is automatically, the unit you're shooting at is also going to get a crossfire marker. So you can set up for a whole nother unit to get crossfire and exposed pretty easily using that. Boy, I hope I explained that in any sort of coherent way. All right, Wormtooth rounds. This one has been a staple of the codex since it was released. And this goes on a Kelomorph model only. Each time the bearer shoots, you can select any number of Liberator auto stubs it is equipped with, so up to 3, to fire a Liberator Wormtooth round. If you do so, then until the shooting is resolved, each Liberator auto stub you selected has the following profile. 18-inch range, heavy 1, strength 6, AP minus 3, 3 damage. A Liberator Wormtooth round does not have the Liberator auto stubs ability. Awesome. It has been one of the best relics in this book since this book came out. Up next, we have the Dagger of Swift Sacrifice. Model equipped with a Magus Biodagger or Sanctus Biodagger only. Each time the bearer is selected to fight, you can reroll 1 wound roll when making the bearer's attacks. Next bullet point. Each time after the bearer has fought, select 1 enemy model that lost any wounds as a result of the attack made by the bearer's Magus Biodagger or Sanctus Biodagger, but was not destroyed. Roll 1d6 on a 3+. That model suffers d3 mortal wounds. If it is destroyed, any excess mortal wounds are ignored. In Crusade or Matched Play, you're not using this. Up next, the Crouchling. Now this is one that goes into the User Plus category. The normal familiar allows you a 1 per game reroll. This allows you once per psychic phase, which is pretty cool. And then if you roll doubles, it can't be denied. There are 2 relics in this section that increase your psychic ability. And if you're running psychic and you're looking more at blessings than Witchfire Maledictions, I would highly consider the Crouchling. If you're doing Twisted Helix, right, and you're trying to build around that psychic power for 6's auto wound, I think you're putting this on a Magus and you're hanging out at the back of the board and you're spending 1 CP a turn to cast that spell anywhere on the board, and you're using this to be able to re-roll that roll. All right, up next we have Gift from Beyond. It is a sniper rifle that has a little bit better damage and inflicts a mortal wound on a 4+. Actually, I think that's the same as all normal sniper rifles. So I think it's just a sniper rifle with a little bit better damage. I suppose this would go into the crossfire section, but again, I don't know why you would ever take this, because a normal sniper rifle has 2 damage on it. So you're going to get your crossfire marker anyway. This is still only heavy 1. It does have a 48-inch range to a 36-inch range. I don't particularly find that range is a problem with this army. Up next, the Unwilling Orb. Not the best relic in this book, but my favorite. This orb has the coolest fluff ever. If your psyker model is equipped with this, the bearer can attempt to deny 1 additional psychic power in your opponent's psychic phase. So now you have 2 denies. Those denies can be anywhere on the board instead of 24 inches. And each time you attempt to manifest a malediction or Witchfire psychic power, add 1 to that psychic test. So in a scenario in which you want to lean heavily into the malediction, Witchfire side of this codex, you would take the Unwilling Orb. The Cranial Inlay, this is, and has been, since this book was released, the best relic in this book. And it goes on a Nexus, and it does two things. The first thing it does is, while the bear is on the battlefield, each time you spend a command point to use a stratagem, you can roll 1d6 on a 5+, that command point is refunded. Kind of cool. The main thing it does is the bear can use the strategic coordination ability one additional time per turn. We haven't done data sheets yet, but roughly what the strategic coordination does is it allows you to take the abilities of a character, like a Primus, and cast them kind of anywhere on the board. So you pick a core unit and you say, all right, this unit of neophytes is going to be within range of my Primus's Meticulous Planner and whatever the one that gives you the reroll hit rolls of 1. And with the cranial inlay, you can do that on 2 units. Last, we have the Voice of the Liberator. It goes on a Clamovis model only, and we're going to add 6 inches to the range of the bear's Proclamation Hailer and Voice of New Truths ability, so increase the range. You can only take 3 relics in a matched play system, and Warm Tooth rounds, cranial inlays are going to be options 1 and 2, and then I think a lot of people now are gravitating toward the Oppressor's Bane. If you're taking any kind of psychic character, you're taking the Crouchling or the Unwilling Orb as option 2, as option 3, or you're saving the CP and you're just running the 2 relics. All right, disciples of the Hive Mind, it is time for the Broodmind discipline. Looking at the psychic tree for the Genestealer Cults. Now, this is, I think, overall an excellent psychic tree. There's a lot of really cool stuff in here. There's one spell in here that is just like, so money. The problem with the Broodmind discipline is that as an army, Genestealer Cults have weird access to psykers. Because there's only 2 psychic characters in the entire book, and the Gene Sect detachment ability means that you can only include 1 of each of those. If you want to have 2 psykers in your army, you have to buy a Patriarch, which, as we discussed earlier, is 140 points, so it's not like a cheap investment. If you could take 2 Maguses, then the Broodmind discipline would get a lot better, or if the Patriarch was just cheaper. This was actually some comment that was left on the channel last week, earlier this week, talking about wishing there was an FAQ to this section of GeneSect that only allowed you to take 1 Magus, and I couldn't agree more. I understand why GeneSect exists. I understand why there's so many characters in this book that you would not want to give competitive players access to more than 1 of, but man, having to pay 140 points for your second Psyker is rough. All right, first up, we have Mass Hypnosis. This is a malediction. So there's 2 maledictions, 2 blessings, and 2 witchfires. So first up are maledictions. Mass Hypnosis is the first one. This is hands down the best psychic power in this book. Close second is the Twisted Helix blessing, but this is just awesome, and I put it ahead of the Twisted Helix one because you aren't locked to a specific cult to get access to it. And it is a warp charge value 7, but remember, Orb of the Unwilling Eye, you can get +1 to your maledictions. If manifested, select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches invisible to the Psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. Subtract 1 from the attack characteristics of models in that unit. In the fight phase, that unit is not eligible to fight until after all eligible units from your army have done so. I suppose the only other one that I like as much as I like Mass Hypnosis and the Twisted Helix one, Foreign Emperor has an awesome spell too, that removes opponents' movement, advance, and charge rolls. That's also really good. And a malediction. All right, next on our list, we have Mind Control. This is the other malediction. It has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches of and visible to this Psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. Each time a model in that unit makes an attack, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. And then the other bullet point, if the result of the psychic test was equal to or greater than that unit's leadership characteristic, subtract 1 from that unit's leadership characteristic and subtract 1 from combat attrition tests taken for this unit. Whew, man. Yeah, nobody cares about the second bullet point. The first bullet point's pretty awesome, -1 to hit. All right, next we have our 2 Witchfires. We have Sonic Blast. This one is excellent. Has a warp charge value of 5, or the Unwilling makes it warp charge value 4, which is nuts. If manifested, select one enemy unit within 18 inches and visible, so it's targetable. For the purposes of selecting an enemy unit, unless the unit is within engagement range of the psyker, the lookout sir rule applies, so it's not like a sniper rifle. But that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds if the result of the psychic test was equal to or greater than the unit's leadership characteristic. It suffers a flat 3 mortal wounds. So remember again, Orb of the Unwilling +1. So pretty easy against some armies on 2d6 +1 to get more than a leadership. So a flat 3. Nice. That mixed with a smite, which is also Witchfire, makes for a pretty sweet melee dealing, or not melee, mortal wound dealing psyker. The next one, Mental Onslaught, is really long. You're never, ever going to take this. You're going to roll some dice, and then you're going to look at the value of the dice, and you're going to compare that dice to some other dice and to a stat on your opponent's data sheet, and maybe at the end of the day, you've done 1 mortal wound. So just forget Mental Onslaught exists. Psychic Stimulus. This has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select one friendly cult unit within 18 inches of and visible to this psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. That unit is eligible to shoot and or declare a charge within a turn in which it advanced or fell back. And models in that unit do not suffer the penalty incurred to their hit rolls for firing assault weapons in the same turn in which that unit advanced. So what's cool about the blessings in this book is there is a stratagem that allows you to use that blessing anywhere on the battlefield, which makes both of the blessings better. Might from Beyond, final psychic power I have to talk about. It is a blessing. If this army if the core mechanic of this book interacted with melee in any way, if Crossfire had anything to do with melee, Might from Beyond would be an infinitely better spell, and I think every list would start with a Patriarch and a Magus. But because Crossfire only interacts with the shooting phase, whether it's the Crossfire marker itself or exposed, kind of an oversight, and there's so few ways to actually increase the damage output on melee weapons, you're kind of capped at 1. Might from Beyond kind of loses some value. So Might from Beyond has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select one friendly cult unit within 18 inches and visible to the psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. Add 1 to the attack's characteristics of models in this unit. So +1 to attacks characteristics, Might from Beyond. All right, that is going to do it for the Broodmind discipline, the Warlord traits, and the relics of this codex. I know this was kind of a quick and dirty video. Like I said, this week's going to be kind of a weird one for me, so we're going to try and get this out, and then we're going to try and get proficient planning and stratagems also out right after this. And then next week we'll be back to some more in-depth, slower paced videos. We'll do some modeling, some painting, some other stuff. But I want to get through stratagems so we can start looking at data sheets. We can start doing some list building. We're going to build 2 different lists. We're going to build a melee one, and then we're going to build a shooting one, and we're going to do 2 versions of that shooting one. We're going to do one with mirrored cults, one with hive cults. We're going to do some play testing with it in April, because I think April 29th is the list submission deadline for the first tournament I'm looking at in May. So I'm going to recruit some friends. We're going to do a couple battle reports, and we'll see which one of those lists we're going to take to whichever tournament, or possibly both tournaments that I end up getting to go to in May. And that'll take us through March and April. So that's the content coming up. So if you like this episode and you're excited for that stuff, please remember to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, ring the bell for notifications, and until next time, geek your own way.